So, Boshara, should we all go on mute and keep on beaming at each other's faces?
Yes, it's all right. It's all right. So good evening, everybody. It's good morning. It's also good afternoon at from the various places that our speakers have joined us, and we really have been looking forward to this evening because we have so many new books which are going to be read from today. And though we live in an era of readers' response and we believe in the death of the author, we also believe that poets as readers are also the bricklayers of a significant layer of meaning in their work. So we are really looking forward to this very engaging evening. And I would like to call upon Jaideep sir to inaugurate this evening by delivering a short and warm welcome note. Over to you, Jaideep sir.
Thank you, Ashudhara. Nothing gold can stay, that Robert Frost wrote once. But nature's first green is always gold, and poetry stays. Hearth Video Poetry Collage Project is a humble attempt to showcase poetry from different backgrounds, its varied moods and cadence. We want to listen to the poets when he or she recites or his or her own poems in front of a camera or mobile video on. We have 6 wonderful minds this evening. They will read from their latest collections or selections. India, Scotland, USA, and Canada are a single home of thoughts now. Thank you, Bashabidi, Dibuda, Shangjukta Di, Tijevi Sab, Anita Di, and Kavita Ezekiel Di for your time and precious moment for this heart projects. Hearty welcome to all lyrical minds attending today's reading session. Our joys are unbound. This world of ours is joy forever. We are waiting with patient dignity. Without further delay, giving the microphone to my co-curator, Bashudhara Roy, for calling the first poet for recitation. Over to Bashudhara. Thank you, everybody, for your gracious presence.
Thank you, sir. And really, we have 6 poets here who need no introduction. Their names are introductions in themselves. And because we are all among friends here, we have decided to formally gloss over the introduction process. So I think we would like to introduce and invite each one of you by one of your poems that we love best. I would like to begin with Bashabidi and to begin by reading her poem, The Earth's Call. The icebergs fragment as oceans lament, keening for life lost irretrievably. The earth is now gasping for breath. A call from the depths of her denuded forests has brought us a message of terror and death. A dirge floats free from each felled tree. We hear the beasts flutter for shelter and succor, displaced from their colony where berries were plenty. They are migrants of new age, from darker recesses than we have seen in our worst dreams. They find their blind way to our cities today, an alarm call from Earth's mantle and streams. Bashabidi, if you had planned to read The Earth's Call, I have already usurped the opportunity. And so I now invite you to talk about your book and to read us a few beautiful poems from it. Over to you.
Thank you, Bashudhara. You read it very well, and thank you for choosing it. So I'm very honored. I'm very honored to be here with such a galaxy of poets, and IPPL has done us proud ever since its inception. And so it's great to be part of it, and thank you for having me. Patient Dignity was written during the COVID year, and I think, as Joydeep said, poetry does touch our hearts and it gives us joy. But I don't know how eternal this earth is anymore. I recently gave a talk on Rabindranath at COP26, and it dawned on me that my grandson is 2.5 years old. By the end of the century, he'll be 78. Will he be allowed to live that long? Will we leave this earth with the way climate change is threatening our lives to this generation to live their full lives? I don't know. And we know that there have been promises made and promises not kept so far by so many of our world leaders. So I think I'm going to begin with a poem to my little grandson today. Okay, to little Louis. And it's called I Miss You. When the lockdown came, though he lived 15 minutes away, I didn't see my little Louis for 6 months, except on FaceTime. I miss you to my lovely little Louis. I miss you, my lovely little one. I miss the soft pressure of your plump, dimpled arms encircled and hugging my neck. I miss you, my joyous little one. I miss your gurgling conversation with pigeons on your balcony as they peek and peck. I miss you, my curious little one. I miss your nappied bottom disappearing under sofas in an exploring spree. I miss you, my intrepid little one. I miss my anxiety of watching you climbing the sofa with mountaineering glee. I miss you, my loving little one. I miss your slobbery kisses on my willing cheeks, welcoming my young man's attention. I miss you, my clever little one. I miss your beguiling smile as you whisk round in seconds and capture my mobile with determination. I miss you, my strong little one. I miss your ambition as you stand on your toes and unsettle paintings on display. I miss you, my rhythmic little one. I miss your timely clapping and swaying to music, which you can repeatedly play. I miss you, my hungry little one. I miss your tiny mouth willingly opened, savoring mummy's dishes with joy. I miss you, my messy little one. I miss your overturning your basket with abandon and your delight with each little toy. I miss you, my joyous little one. I miss your chuckling wonder, watching birds flying in the limitless sky. I miss you, my tired little one. I miss you when you fall asleep on my shoulder, rocking to my Bengali lullaby. So that's to little Louis. I will read a couple about India. And this is on Bengali New Year. On Bengali New Year, we have to-go songs everywhere and songs by other composers like J Prasad and D.L. Roy. And this is what I missed this year on Bengali New Year. And my poems keep moving between India and Scotland. So this was a day when a nation awoke to the promise of a resplendent dawn. This was a day when the Moidan evoked the premise for a new resolution. This was the day when in the early hours, Tagore's songs resounded from households and street corners, when the conch shell was sounded and dancers knew the power of hope uncompounded. But today I wonder how the empty Maidan responds as it looks for the emergence of families and friends greeting everyone. Is Netaji surprised to see the confluence of 5 roads bereft of traffic on the run, while the Hooghly flows with renewed confidence? We know that 1 year has ended in the city which has never let me go, where the future is suspended and livelihoods are severed for now. But there is a ray of hope tendered as the community spirit lives and grows. I will read a poem now about the Hooghly again. Dolphins return to the Hooghly. You know that the rivers saw fresh life again, right? So they are back where they belong, with their convivial ardor and song. They play with abandon today. They indulge in balletic display. The factories are frozen for now, unimpeding the river's swift flow. The nets that once snared and trapped those who dared have been gathered and folded away. And static boats dream of past fishing days. The smog has lifted, the tide has shifted, as dolphins cavort in a newfound liberty along the carts of a city whose placidity has brought back these migrants after 3 decades to a carnivalesque celebration in their fluid arcades. And I think my time is up now. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bashwadi, for these lovely poems. We could literally see Louis there, and we send him love and blessings. May you get to see him every day. We move over to our next poet, Vibhupadi, and I would like to read out a little portion from his poem, From the Extra Medical Ward. You pulled down the slender oxygen tube and let your sweat dry into the savage hours of the night. You let your body lose its native heat, its last lingering shine. You remembered the early morning voices and how little they meant to you, now that you were beginning to examine the intricate maneuverings of the soul. I saw you from a space of difference, felt near my lips your warm departing breath. I watched how my cousin's fresh blood danced into my life, drop after drop. As the day was wearing off, qualified men quietly brought back their old indifference to going things and stopped your dark, blind look from the general eye. You never let your good wife know, although now it hardly mattered. Your soul had sent its message of love into her ears, and so you straightened your body and waited for the final nightfall. Vibhuda, over to you, and we look forward to your beautiful poems.
Thank you. I won't say anything about the book. It's called Principles of Sleep, except that most of the poems here were written in 2015 or thereabout. I will read out only 4 of my poems. Please listen to them. The first one is called Night Lives. What is seen are shadows that approximately determine the lines of my sleep. Nothing may be given over to the night and stars. The image of the goddess wanders in the open fields. The empty road lies in front of my borrowed house. Even in sleep, shadows and dreams have to be seen as my light and darkness. Nothing else seems to be where I hid bits of paper from letters received long ago from friends and lovers. The earth sits still on its own ground, even as the night and stars look for their place in the sky's furrowed space. Fulfillment lingers at the edge of the muted dark. The second one is called Voyages. It is midnight, and the heart and the mind go their separate ways. Someone, somewhere, is always waiting for the heart, holding the past, dreaming of what we lost in infamous defeats. The mind is always on the lookout for what speaks to it in a language it is so well understands and relates to the present loss. It dances on the body at the exact place where it needs passion and play, at the exact places where it needs passion and play, even if they are evasive now. Memories surround us, the gentle pressure of the years, the mind's explosive dreams, the heart's fine blue sky. My third poem is called Caves. Whose breath comes in and goes out as if it were life. In the midst of speechlessness, I invite my ancestors. They are here, almost touching me. Their light breath falls on my brown skin, digs out history. The care will always be here. Deep under the sea water, far from the diver's hand, whose wandering voice takes hold of me wherever I am. Who plays his dark games far inside the body's mysteries. The last poem. Everything will return. Everything shall return places from where they began. Even the fallen leaves shall return to the tree. The body shall return to another body, begin its dances again in the earth's floor. I know after a while everything will want to leave the place, hunt out a new place. Even the waters return to the sky. The fingers that hold the pen, trembling like splashed water, and then become still. Each vertical thing longs for its horizontal rest, far from all strength and pride. Even the sea goes back into the rivers. Days and nights follow each other, competing for rest, assuming nothing, not even the sun's power. There is nothing I can't recall from a previous day, loving the privacy of going back. Even the magic of greens will return to the falling leaves. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vibhuda, for these wonderful poems. Very heartfelt, very moving. Thank you so much. We move over to our third poet, Sanjukta Di. And I would like to read a poem from Unbound, which is very close to my heart. It's called Green Leaf. A green leaf suddenly spun wildly and freed itself from the outstretched dark brown branch of the tall eucalyptus. A wild wind blew it upwards, and it sailed on the blue sea above till a phoenix caught it in its beak, scaling dizzying heights. The green leaf gleamed as it twirled off and sailed on the wings of cloud nine. And then it somersaulted, diving downwards, and lay like any new dead on the bosom of the good earth. Thank you, Sanjukta Di, for this lovely poem, and over to you for more of such beauties. You are muted.
Thank you, Boshidhara, and hello, everyone. Wonderful to be with poet buddies, if I can call you that, where we can LOL also. So all of us with a new book, books which can look within, look without, and look beyond our many worlds. That's what poetry is. Some remote, some intimate, a world focusing on a world mindlessly violent, or a world which is positive, powerful, and philosophic. I will not talk about my book, but I will. Boshidhara had said we need to talk about the book, but as nobody did, I'm not going to be so conceited to do that. So now I will read my first poem, also a poem that Boshidhara likes a lot. But before I do that, the only thing I want to talk about my last book of poems, which was published recently in September, is that it's really not my book. It's a book which belonged to my student who unfortunately COVID snatched away. Her name is Shrutapa Chaudhary. And then her unfinished job was taken up with so much of enthusiasm, sparing so much of time by the two editors, Shangita and Joydeep, and Boshidhara, who was there from day one of curating the book. So I'm very grateful to them. Otherwise, this seventh book would not have happened. The first poem that I want to read is a poem that I wrote on the World Environment Day on the 5th of May, 2020, that is last year. And it addresses the Chipko movement, also known as the Chipko Andolan, nonviolent social and ecological movement by rural villagers, particularly women. And it aimed at protecting trees and forests slated for government-backed logging. So I had initially called it felling, but later on I changed the title to Chipko. That night, they did not sleep. Their men slept and snored as they crept out of their huts. They giggled and whispered. They slowly walked towards their forest with its many tree gods, many secrets stored in the roots and branches, laughter and love in the rustle of leaves. The shark-like jaws of the electric saws waited impatiently to fell them, to kill them, the timber mafia, the land grabbers, the illegal miners reveled in the murder of forests and trees. The women of the village each hugged a tree, clinging, embracing as securely as adhesive. They clung on in intimate union, embracing the tall, proud, silent trees like Radha clinging to Krishna. Cling on, dear sisters, hug us tightly as if it's the last day of your lives. Chipko, Chipko, resonated the voice of their leader, Gaura Devi, as the women passionately clung to the trees like lovers, as women hugged the trees like mothers. No word or force could tear them away from their beloved trees. My second poem is about what we went through during the second surge of COVID-19 around April 2021, when people were dying in front of overcrowded hospitals that had run out of oxygen cylinders. I called it COVID-19 Season 2. Once again, sirens screech like banshees, fast and furious ambulances in a life or death race, howls and cries spiraling insanely in the poisoned air. Crowded crematoriums, electric ovens smell like those as at Auschwitz. Charred bodies, bones, skulls struck with bamboo poles. The queue is restless and long. Cemeteries state no vacancy. Return to dust is very slow. They said, it's back again, a viral toxic tsunami, stronger than sound, swifter than light, those spiky floating balls on screen that no fighter plane can ground. Snigger at the cries and screams. Truth is stranger than pictures. Mindless emperors issue strictures. The timeless caveats now vapid lectures. Prevention is better than cure. Forewarned is forearmed. A stitch in time saves 9. Ignore, ignore, let's wine and dine. Everyone has to die, it's just a matter of time. Our in-house trilling cuckoo, my 4-year-old granddaughter said, Granny, don't forget to take your mobile with you if you have to go. And the last poem written in utter helplessness, this one. Peace. Peace is a warm shawl within the sunless darkness of the serene womb. The first flash of light, the first cry, the first touch of hands, the first violence, the snipping of the cord. Peace is as fragile as a snowflake. Peace glistens like a drop of dew on a smiling leaf sunning itself. Peace surpasses all understanding. Peace lies at the heart of every outcry. Peace is stabbed each time as the knife enters the heart. Peace is in splinters as the bombs drop, guns fire, tanks roar, missiles zoom, drones drop precise death with diabolic accuracy. All is toxic everywhere. Landscapes are pregnant with landmines. The skies are darkened by the wings of vultures. The thunderous fighter planes advance like sharks. Yet, compassionate peace is an invincible, passionate warrior that nestles at the core of being. It sprouts like leaves of grass on the charred wastelands of Kurukshetra and Troy, Vietnam, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Palestine. Peace that truly surpasses all understanding. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjukta Di, for concluding with that poem and leaving us enriched also with a very profound Eliotine sense. Thank you so much. I would now call upon Jaideep sir, because why should I have all the fun of reading out all the poems? So I would call upon my co-curator to also, have the opportunity of reading these lovely poems that we are celebrating today. Over to you, Jaideep sir.
15th August 1974. We fought for light, we got it. We didn't know what to make of it. In darkness there was hope, in light there is despair. 15th August 1974, a titled poem, a poem by J Prasad in this collection, and a poet who uses conventions of light verse for serious themes. J Prasad needs no introduction as a critic and as a writer. His first book of poems, In Delhi Without a Visa, was published in 1996. And This World of Mine is his newest collection of 50 selected poems. Over to Prasad sir. As Sanukta says, Prasad Siji says, so Jijivisa to Prasad sir.
It's always a joke. My name, it's usually a question asked of freshers. What does GJV Prasad? What does GJV stand for? It's a long name. It's Gauri Shankar Jayalakshmi Venkateshwara Prasad. My name is actually Venkateshwara Prasad. My father's name is Gauri Shankar. My mother's name is Jayalakshmi. So I'm that son. Right. Okay. This, as you realize, is selected poems, as Jaideep said, and it's still only 50 poems. So I don't write very much. I feel like an imposter in such company. So I thought I'd start by saying, oh, here's the interlude. You heard some wonderful, serious, lovely poets, and you'll hear some more after me. So take me in the middle as the interlude. One more thing about my poetry is that when I started studying literature in college, the personal, being political, was a big slogan. The personal is political. For me, the political is always personal. So just as you heard that poem that I actually wrote on that particular day, on the Independence Day, and I wrote for 4 years. Every year on Independence Day, I'd write a poem. So I wanted to do a cycle, but I didn't. I ended at the fourth day. I said, "Oh, enough." So I'll begin with a poem I should never have had reason to write. This is called Just Reality. Just Reality. And will you marry her and make her an honest woman? Asked the judge of the rapist. She felt violated all over again. The judge felt no remorse. After all, rape was allowed in marriage, and he could do what he wanted, the husband, and she have the position of a wife. Win-win all around. Humanity drowned in blood, torn to shreds by barbarity. No, said the rapist lawyer. My lord, now it would be bigamy. He would have loved to marry her then. Now he's a married man with children. How can he marry his prey of earlier times? Yes, thought the judge. He has another woman now to rape. This is fate, young woman. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Tempted him too early in life, in his life. A little later, and you could have been his wife. He's a respectable man. Won't it be best to reach a settlement? Make him pay for his act, he said, and laughed at his own joke. The next poem that I'm going to read was written for an anthology of food poems. I actually wrote the poem that Sajita was talking about earlier, Edible Woman, also for the anthology, and then I said, no, I withdraw it. I take it back. Right? So I'm going to read the one which was included in that anthology. It's called And Anna Lakshmi Cried. Every morsel you waste adds another drop of tears to Anna Lakshmi's eyes. As she moans by the river, my grandfather said. An American friend said his mother made him eat by asking him to imagine me starving in India or Africa. But how would that have helped? I asked him. Only made you bigger and stronger to put me in my place. He didn't know. He'd never asked his mom, and she was dead now. And in any case, this Indian didn't look he'd starved ever. Maids used to bring lunch for the rich kids in class, and the smell of eggs and oranges still reminds me of school. Curd rice of home, while I longed for samosas and coke. We went without sugar for a year or two, and rice was difficult to find. The Green Revolution, a distant dream and not yet a nightmare. They poured milk into the seas elsewhere and let the grains rot in the fields. The same word, I would think. And when they did send some across, we hated them for it. I remember when potatoes meant a feast, we were the privileged ones, whose dustbins others would forage, and envy the one who got more, snatching it from dogs. So is locally, they say, sustainability they intone. Where there is clean water and fertile fields, some can do so because they can. Others will do as ever because they can't. Right. I'm just reading in order it is in my book. I didn't make any special effort. This is called growing old. In English, he became someone's old man early. It took him time in his Indian language. But as he grew older and more respected, not in English, English kept him young and with it. His wisdom he gained in years, not in English. Alzheimer stared at him in English. Soon he realized he was growing old and unwanted in English as also not in English. This is a right. Maybe two more poems. This is a poem I wrote for an exhibition on hand fans. So it's titled Kai Visri. Kai Visri is Tamil for hand fan. I'm a fanatic of fans, not a fan of fanatics. Do not fan the flames of prejudice, nor fan the pride of the powerful. Rather fan the sweat of the laborer, fan to sleep the tired, dead from work. The sahibs have moved on from fans, the pankawalas obsolete as their fans. But the hand fans see us through hot days and nights of the powerless. Each fan a story, each swing a song, a sigh, a smile of memory. Do you remember the night of the stars, of the meteor shower? The night wasn't hot, but still, and we had run out of fans. So you made one out of paper, and it was so much fun that all of us had folded paper fans as we watched the dark light up for us. The joy we felt that night. Tata always wanted the electric fan on one, like a maiden slowly fanning a king, we would say. Today, the inverter ensures the hand fan is on the wall, another decoration piece along with large brass vessels and tall metal lamps, reminding us of the exquisiteness of our past, reassuring in their wisdom that when all else fails, the hand fan will bring the winds of change. And this may be second last one because I'm running out of time, I'm sure. This is called Road Kill. This is a Delhi poem. The streets rage in Delhi. They circle around your throat like pythons. In heat and cold, rain and shine, arterial and venal. A man killed a bus driver the other day. Another, a taxi driver, raped his customer and then burnt her. A policeman simply picked up a brick, not having been issued a revolver. Everyone is in a hurry. Everyone on a tight, short leash. The red light always ready to beat you before you begin. Stopping the poor, of course, and sometimes daring to stop the rich. Someone has to get it. The streets rage in Delhi. Right. My last poem is a personal poem. Finally, this is a poem to my brother who died in his late 40s. And this is again written around that time. This was a few years later, actually. This was Nattu. This was Nattu, I said, sifting through the ashes and bones. No, snapped Gopi, his lifelong friend. Only something to remember him by. We cast a leaking pot of memories into the ocean, right next to the sanctuary he had made his own. Like waves in the ocean are we, said someone. Always there, but only for moments, forever and almost never. The rest of the ashes we carried in a plastic bag to the hills he so loved, and immersed in the holy river. The plastic bag, retrieved at the last minute, let us not add to the pollution, had some traces of ashes still. Natu always wanted to live life to the full, till the end. We washed the bag out in the cleansing waters. Hope he breaks free of the chain, someone said, as the river rushed to meet the ocean. So that was that. Why are they holding this Havan? Asked Poonam. Why are they talking of him as if to remember him is an effort? 4 years have gone by, and finally gone are the dark circles so cruelly painted around their eyes. Why are they praying for his soul and our peace? When he's here with me, as he always has and will, Poonam asked in bewilderment. He is here, and that is that. Thank you. I think I run out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, JJV sir. It was wonderful listening to you. Wonderful, general to personal, and that's the journey is wonderful. Thank you so much. And we wish the book will travel in years to come. Thank you so much. We move on to born and brought up in Mumbai, original Bombay, Kavita Ezekiel. And I want 6 million Jews back to their homes, to their hat shops, their loved ones, and their bright mornings, to awake in their beds with soft sheets and warm slippers, to put their feet into and cross the threshold of kitchens, smelling warm with a baking of challah bread. Kavita Ezekiel, a home with dignity. Kavita Ezekiel needs no introduction. Her first book of poems appeared in 1989, Family Sunday and Other Poems. And she will be reading from her latest collection. And she is the daughter of the Gangotri of Indian English poetry, Nissim Ezekiel. Over to Kavita Ji.
Thank you very much, Jaideep. And I want to begin by saying there are only 2 people in this world who can get me up for this poetry reading at 7:30 in the morning in Calgary in the dark. One of them is Bashudhara, of course, and the other one is Jaideep. And there is a third person who used to wake me up on a Sunday morning, and that was my father.
My God.
Whom I celebrated in a poem called Those Bombay Sundays, which is not in this book. But I know a few lines by heart, so I thought I would just recite them. Those Bombay Sundays, my father woke up his usual early. Carpe diem, he said, seize the day. Did he think I was a bird? Those are the lines. So anyway, carpe diem, everybody knows, seize the day. I just wanted to say a few words about my new book, Light of the Sabbath. Somebody said about poetry that when we are young, we don't reflect on our lives. I don't know if that's fully true, but as we get older, we certainly begin to reflect, to ponder, to miss all of those warm personalities that contributed to shaping our lives and our worldviews. And this is what my book is all about. It's not just nostalgia, but it is celebrating my roots, celebrating the warm personalities. And it's a very special book because for 3 reasons, of course, one about the personalities that shaped my life, and whatever shapes my life shapes my poetry. But Basudharadi also wrote a beautiful, heart-touching review, very insightful. And so thank you, Basudharadi. And also Saranya Subramaniam, who had hosted a special conversation with myself and Menika Shivdasani about my father's poetry. And my father always mentored the young people. So I asked Saranya to write the foreword, and she was absolutely shocked. She was like, don't you want a famous person, well-known person to write your foreword? And I said, no, absolutely not. I do want you to write. Well, what shall I write? Well, write how you feel. Here's the PDF, read the poems. And so she wrote. And so she's even younger than my daughter, and probably the third child that I never had. So the 3 reasons why the book is very special. I'm going to read the title poem, which is called Light of the Sabbath, which celebrates my dear aunt, who made Aliyah to Israel when she was 60 years old, taught herself Hebrew. Her first language was Marathi. She taught herself English, and then she taught herself Hebrew, which is absolutely a feat. And this poem celebrates my aunt Hannah, which we call Hannah by Auntie. Light of the Sabbath. Sacred Friday of the Sabbath lamps. An aunt's faithful hands squeeze grapes. She allows me to squeeze just a few. Purple juice stained hands in purple glass, steady purple flame rising to him who listens. Meaning of the Shema revealed. Hebrew, English, and Marathi prayers flood the room. God is a linguist, understands all languages. He doesn't need a translator. The Sabbath done, she rubbed my hair with coconut oil, sleeping with newspapered pillow till morning, washing out the oil till hair lights shone. By her same hands of faith that lit the lamps, cooked red mutton curry, coconut rice on her room corner kerosene stove. Saturday evening, the sun gone to bed. Those hands that move mountains, stirred the curry, fluffed the rice. Faith may move mountains. The Lord said, let there be light, the Sabbath light, the light of 150 Psalms, her faithful reading on Saturdays. Each Friday evening, we squeezed the purple grapes of faith, and each Saturday, she read all 150 Psalms, head covered with the sari scarf, her godly body swaying slightly, lips moving in whispering, prayerful devotion. Thank you. Another theme of my book is light. And so I'm going to read a poem called Saying Twilight in 2 languages. The darkness always knows it is winter. It possesses intuition and wisdom. It enters my home earlier and earlier, silently, shortening the days, balancing on the edge of night. I miss my mother, though not just in winter. She turned on the lights at the first hint of twilight. She called it Teeny Sansa. This tea is soft, not hard, as in English. It's a Marathi word, our first language, along with English. Try saying it. Teeny Sansa. Put your tongue against your front teeth. It will automatically soften the tea. Twilight is the soft light, the separation of day from night. Spoken with a hard T, and Teeny Sansa is the soft T. It also means twilight. The light is the same though, and uses a different language to call it by its name. I'm trying to teach my daughter to say Teeny Sansa. Marathi is not her first language. She can say twilight comfortably with the hard T. She obliges me by practicing. Either way, still, it will be twilight when it's time for the light to change, and I will miss my mother. Thank you. And one of my favorite poems is Alibarg. Some of you have read this poem on my Facebook or on my poetry page. And Alibarg is a small coastal town where the Jewish people first landed, where there was a shipwreck over 2,000 years ago. And my uncle owned a grain mill there. And so this is written in celebration of my uncle, my aunt, who was my mother's older sister, and my cousin who passed away recently. Alibarg starts with a quotation from the Beatles. There are places I'll remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better, some have gone, and some remain. I can still sing that. Here's the poem. It was a village then, a ferry the only means to get across. My uncle owned a grain mill. He was a jovial man with a rich laugh. The grain poured out of the ancient machines like his patient and unselfish love for us. My aunt was kind, like all my other aunts. She raised chickens and cooked spicy food. She put 10 chilies in the curry when I visited. Her usual was 20. She was an older sister to my mother. She knew we liked the food less spicy. Father had lived in England, and we were accustomed to blander fare. At evenfall, we talked in soft voices. The hens were asleep. Disturbing them meant risking breakfast without eggs. Once I watched a cackling hen lay an egg. In the fields were cows and barking dogs. My cousin wove in and out of them with me and my screams on the bicycle. He teased me because I was afraid. The ocean lapped at the gates of the cottage. We walked barefoot on the sand. I skipped. He held my hand tightly so I wouldn't skip away. My cousin caught the puffer fish that looked like pregnant women. We must cook before nightfall. The lantern light was the only electricity then. A rat bit my cousin's toe once. Paraffin was the cure as I remember it. But we got there, defiant of the rains. It was home and very sweet. Holding umbrellas over our heads, willing the rocking boat to land us safely ashore. I had heard of Jesus in school, of how he walked on water and his command to still the storm. I remember praying to have that kind of faith, the kind that stills the storm. I cannot swim though. I want to walk the earth with grace. Alibarg is a village no more. My uncle has passed and the grain mill has passed on to new owners. I guess technology has replaced those ancient machines. I read of the great developments there of hotels, rich residences, and tall buildings. You can get there by car or luxury bus. I miss Alibarg, the flickering lanterns, sleeping on mats, eating from thalis. I miss Alibarg, the hushed whispers between cousins. I don't know when I can return to the land of my ancestors, the land of the Shanwar Telis, the oil pressers. I yearn for the unsullied rustic scenes, the dotted fields of cows and the music of their bells, the hush of the chickens settling down for the night. And I don't know where the fish sleep, in the folds of the waves or in the folds of my memory. Thank you. And the last poem I'm going to read is called China Grass Halwa. And everybody here, I think, knows what halwa is. And China Grass Halwa is for my Aunt Ivy, or Ivy Auntie, as we called her, who again went off to Israel. They all went to Israel, but my dad didn't want to go, so we all stayed. And so this is a celebration of Ivy Auntie. China Grass Halwa. My home has square footage. My aunt's home in the city of my birth, Bombay, was neither square nor had footage. Narrow in length and no breadth to speak of. Small, narrow bed, kerosene stove precariously in one corner, a few clothes in trunks, unlike my closet. Pots and pans too, just the bare stuff in a tin trunk. Husband, wife, and 2 children. No square footage. So much love to go around. Nieces and friends welcome. Sit on each other's laps. But please visit. There is space for all. The world's best China grass halwa made on the kerosene stove, left to set in a thali, only the hands of love could delicately craft in the open plan kitchen of nobody's desiring. The minuscule home faced the synagogue, the street crowd surging sans relief. I wanted to be married in that synagogue, but God had other plans. The one-man balcony, standing room for one, or maybe fit another half-person, bodies overlapping. As long as you could see the synagogue, it was home. I wanted to break the glass and hear the mazel tov, but God had other plans in mind. I would be a bride of another kind. I guess a bride is a bride is a bride. The dark, common bathing room outside the flat bathed the children at 4 in the morning. Conflicts with neighbors must be avoided at all costs. No crying if soap got into your eyes, Ivy Auntie said. They left in droves. She went too. She took the family, a very few bundles of clothes and whatever. Next year in the promised land. She told me she saw black, pitch black, when she got there. We were all back home in the light of togetherness. She was going to have to make a home out of mere promises. What about the promise to me? Who will make the China grass halwa now? Whose lap to sit on? Who will save me from mother when she became angry and impatient with me? Talk on the telephone must suffice. Pour out the love and memories long distance. Create your own promised land. Perhaps send the China grass halwa by Amazon, even if it's a joke. Our shared laughter stirs the halwa memory. She says she'll send me Merci chocolates. We get those here. I only want her halwa. I want my Ivy auntie back. Thank you. Those are the poems from my book. I think I took 10 minutes or maybe a little more.
Thank you, Kavitadi. Wonderful poems, and we wish the book will travel a long trajectory in the days to come.
Thank you.
Congratulations once again. We move on to another prolific writer, Anita Nahal. As a teen, something I used to watch my mom's slim shoulders, seeming young forever, rounded and glowing. In extreme daily heat, she would fan herself with a sari pillow, sprinkling water on her skin, and her sleeveless blouse gave me a glimpse of her shoulders. Mom's shoulders, Anita Nahal. Anita Nahal needs no introduction, is a professor, poet, flash fictionist, children's writer, and she teaches at the University of District Columbia, Washington, D.C. And she will read from her latest collection. And whenever I talk or communicate with Anita, I remember her great father, Chaman Nahal. And always Azadi. There is a sense of Azadi in me. Over to Anita.
Thank you, Joydeep, and thank you, Bashudra, for this invitation. You read a poem, Joydeep, which is very dear to my heart, about my mother. Thank you for reading that poem. And I have a tall order to follow all the amazing poets who just read their poems. I am going to read two poems from my latest book, which is What's Wrong with Us Kali Women. And this was published in 2021. And my first book came out in 1988. My second book came out in 2018. So a lot of gap, life took over, but, been writing and trying to write more. So What's Wrong with Us Kali Women, and most of my other books deal with basically injustices in life. And some of you have already read about environment, you have read about COVID-19, personal tribulations. So all those are also themes in my book. So it's going to be tough to select. But the first poem I'm going to read is the title of the book itself. It's called What's Wrong with Us Kali Women. And please excuse if there are any one or two words, but some of my words are strong, so kindly excuse. So this is called What's Wrong with Us Kali Women. And most of my poems, I just want to say, are prose poems, and I write them more like spoken word. I have moved away from free verse, which I used to earlier write in. There's nothing wrong, nothing wrong. That's your fear labeling us. We are the Kali women and all other female, male, androgynous gods. We don't distinguish, we seek, we learn, comprehend, embrace. We are the Kali women in the forefront, striding, and yes, strutting our stuff too. Some men gulp and gawk, make a tight knot of patriarchy right in front of their walls. They are the same who have been bowing before Kali's statues for centuries, marking their foreheads with mitti from her robes, and then they call her Ma Kali and walk away brash, brazen, evil. Don't think she's not watching. There's nothing wrong, nothing wrong. That's your fear labeling us. We are the Kali women and all other female, male, androgynous gods, always in front, straddling between pathways, poles, blocks, and behavior, between screams and footsteps pining for justice. Denied, justice battered, justice flagged, murdered, burned, their dark skin, their gender, religion, their sandals blood-stained, their clothes drenched, and smelling of your foul breath, with your hands striking, your feet jutting and hitting. And then some in their sinister voice sing well into the murky night, Makali, 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 Makali. Don't think she's not watching. There's nothing wrong, nothing wrong. That's your fear labeling us. We are the Kali women. My skin is Kali, my heart is gold, my soul is a child, cries, jumps, laughs, feelings flow like fresh churned cream from cow's milk. My skin disgusts you, yet you try to tan yours. My skin disturbs you, yet you find it exotic. My skin you call Gandhi, but I am clean, I bathe. In winters, when my skin lightens a bit, you proclaim I'm looking soft, fair. I was always clean. It's your mind that is dirty. Even mock bathing in river Ganga might skim above your falseness. Makali, 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 Makali. Don't think she's not watching. And the second poem that I'm going to read is called Paying My Debt in Two Lands. So a lot of poems are about, immigrant writings. Kavita speaks a lot about her poems, about immigrants. So, and a lot of my poems are written in first person. They are confessional, but not all of them. So I hope that there is a universality that is there in my poems. This poem is called Paying My Debt to Two Lands. I left my India, where as a child I learned to swim in the river Ganga. For Hindus, the most sacred waters. My father tied an empty tin box for learners to my chest and guided me into gushing waters in the holy city of Hardwar. I was terrified less, mesmerized more by Ganga flowing by in all its might, signaling at me like a protective grandparent. In the evening, tiny paper boats with lights seemed like fireflies out seeking companionship. And sometimes I saw ashes of cremated Hindus drifting by with only yellow marigolds peeking above the water like solemn pall bearers. Overwhelmed, my little frame huddled next to my parents, all of us reflecting in the night waters. It was my cultural spirituality attempting to bond with me. Now I live near the Potomac waters of another nation's capital and circling the stately monuments of history in my America. A new bond has been forged. My son will cremate me one day in this land, and that became our savior, keeping only a handful of my ashes to go into the Ganga, so that my soul pays its debt to two lands. Thank you. Thank you. If I have time, I'll say out one more. Basudra, do I have time? Joydeep? Okay. So a lot of my poems also deal with human emotions, particularly about narcissism, because I believe humans are very narcissist. We think that we are the only great species, forgetting there are other species on this earth. And within ourselves, we are constantly squabbling and pulling each other down. So this is a poem about that. It's called My Trojan Horse. Yes, we let our ego be center stage on occasions, and my ego became the Trojan horse. I myself constructed the Gulliverian prop, then willingly revealed the path to the sanctity of my comprehensions. It proved treacherous, and I made it clear to my conscience I wanted to be found hastily. Many other horses joined my Trojan with necks twisted, eyes massive and bolting, legs twined and tails growing from navels, mouths leering, hooves puffing, manes stiff like frightened quills fallen from a porcupine. A few men's faces focus on the fight, unnerved. Rest appear barren with cardboard cutouts filling the arena. As my Trojan horse fell on its back, the bulls came darting, poised for the final denunciation. I upturned my hands to face the sky, seeking arms of forgiveness. The bulls transformed into thousands of Ganesha, some airborne, some prancing, and one sitting near me engrossed, observing my expressions. I was able to walk away, ego bruised, subdued, and ready to start anew. That night, I pushed my Trojan horse into Ganesha's care to be melted and reused as asphalt, binding me to modesty. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anita Di, for wonderful lines. It's so powerful. It moved us so much. Thank you so much. Wish you a happy journey of the book.
Thank
Now, thank you, everyone. Over to Vashudhara.
Thank you. We had anticipated more and more poems, but our speakers have been very, very, disciplined, and they have kept to the time limit. And so we are at the conclusion of a wonderful program. We have lovely members in the audience, and it has been a wonderful audience. They have been there with us throughout the evening. They have encouraged us, and we would love to hear if they would, talk about or comment upon these poems. I think I will take the liberty to invite Malashri ma'am, whom I see here. Malashri ma'am, if you are here, we would love to see you, and we would love to hear you.
Hello, everyone. I am indeed here, and I've been listening to all the poetry with rapt attention and great admiration. I'm struck by the range of the poetry, from the personal to the political, as I heard from GJV, from the immigrant point of view, the multiraciality, as I heard from Anita, and of course Bashobi's wonderful, sensitive insights into social realities. Sanjukta, though I've read some of those poems, and Sanjukta and I keep closely in touch, it's always a treat to hear you again, Sanjukta. And this is the first time that I'm listening to some of the other poets here, particularly I missed some of the names, but I really have enjoyed listening to all the poetry. And thank you very much for inviting a few comments. Just keep up the great writing and the great work. Thank you. Kavita, yes, Kavita, I've heard you before very briefly, but today I got to hear a pack of poems. Thank you.
Thank you, Malashri ma'am. And you have also reviewed Anita Di's latest collection.
That I have, yes. It's a book that's very dear to me.
Yes.
Thank you to both of you, Manashri ji, for reviewing the book in The Statesman, and Busudra reviewing the review. It came out in EastIndiaStory.com, and both reviews were so amazing that I was reading the review and thinking, are those my poems? So you really, opened up my own eyes to my poetry in ways that only very deep, sensitive individuals can do. You really understood my poetry, and I'm so grateful to you for having taken the time to write those reviews. Thank you so much to both.
Thank you, Malashri.
Vibhu Padhi's work I heard for the first time today, and it's very, very impressive. Very deep indeed.
Thank you, Malashri, for being with us and for consenting to talk to us. Also, thank you so much. We are always honored and strengthened by your presence amongst us. I would like to invite Christina. Christina can, if Christina has a comment for us, though I think she joined a little late. She heard Anita Di reciting. Anybody else from the audience? We would love to hear you. Abha ma'am, anybody? Anybody? If anybody has a comment for us, Richa, if you have a comment for us.
It was such a wonderful evening, actually. Thank you so much for organizing it for us. And it was actually a delight to not only delight, but also I felt that poetry has been taken up as a responsibility. And I am highly inspired. Thank you so much for the lovely poems. I'll remember the words Chipko, I'll remember the words Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So I'll stay with that throughout the night, actually. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Richa. Richa is a very powerful poet who writes both in Hindi and English, and she has published a book of feminist verse in Hindi. We're looking forward to her English poems also very soon. Thank you, Richa. Thank you, everybody in the audience. This has been a wonderful evening. And the books that we have discussed today, the books that we have celebrated today, rather, we will not say discuss, the books that we have celebrated today, beginning with Bashabidi's Patient Dignity and the Principles of Sleep, Unbound, The World That Is Mine, This World That Is Mine, Light of the Sabbath, What's Wrong with Us Kali Women. I believe, we believe, I and Jaideep sir both, because we spoke about this before, we believe that each of these volumes, has something very powerful to contribute to the history of Indian English poetry that is in the making today. And we really wish these poems and these poets and these books a very, very happy, a very, very prosperous journey across libraries, across classrooms, across university syllabi, and of course, across minds and hearts. We are very grateful that all of you consented to be with us this evening. And we also firmly believe that your voices reading out your poems will remain the makers of their elementary meanings, at least. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the wonderful audience that we have had. And we look forward to many more sessions of reading and celebrating poetry together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
for having us.
So much. Thank you.
The joy of poetry is never dead.
All right. Good night.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
morning
you.
to me.
And good morning.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good morning. Good night.